Snow White. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived a young princess named Snow White. She was known throughout the kingdom for her beauty, her kindness, and her warm heart. Her hair was as black as night, and her skin was as fair as freshly fallen snow. Snow White's eyes sparkled like two precious sapphires, and her smile was as bright as the morning sun. Snow White's story began with her birth, which was celebrated with great joy by her parents, the king and queen. Her family loved her dearly, and the kingdom flourished under their rule. The royal gardens were filled with the most colorful, fragrant flowers, and the people were happy. The wicked queen had a magical mirror that could tell her who the fairest person in the kingdom was. For years, she had admired herself in the mirror, believing she was the most beautiful. But one day, as Snow White grew into a young beautiful girl, the mirror declared that Snow White had surpassed her in beauty. Jealousy and anger overlooked the wicked queen's heart, and she plotted to get rid of Snow White. She ordered her faithful huntsman to take the princess deep into the forest and never return. The huntsman, who was kind-hearted and could not bear to harm the young princess, took her far into the woods but let her go, leaving her to find her way. Alone and frightened, Snow White wandered through the dense forest. The trees seemed to reach out to her, their branches casting eerie shadows, and the rustling of leaves and the hooting of owls added to her unease. But as she walked deeper into the woods, she discovered a small cottage hidden among the trees. The cottage was so tiny and cute that it seemed to belong in a fairy tale. Snow White knocked on the door, and when there was no answer, she timidly entered. Inside, she found a cozy, messy little home. There were 7 small beds, and tables filled with half-eaten bowls of porridge, and an array of tiny chairs. The place looked like it belonged to 7 little people. Snow White felt tired and hungry, so she decided to clean the cottage and prepare a meal for its inhabitants. She sang as she worked, and her voice was so sweet that it echoed through the woods. Meanwhile, the cottage's new owner were not children, but 7 dwarfs who had been living there for years. They were mired, who spent days digging for precious gems. When they returned home that evening, they were surprised to find their cottage neat and clean, and a delicious small meal waiting for them. Snow White was just as surprised as the dwarfs. They all introduced themselves, and she explained her story, how her wicked stepmother had tried to harm her, and how she had become lost in the woods. The dwarfs felt sorry for Snow White and offered her a place to stay. She gladly accepted their kindness and soon became their friend. She helped with cooking, cleaning, and tidying up, and the little cottage became a warm and happy home. The wicked queen, back at the place, learned from her magical mirror that Snow White was still alive and living with the dwarf. Consumed by jealousy, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She would go to the cottage herself and get rid of Snow White once and for all. Dressed in a disguise, the queen arrived at the cottage and offered Snow White a beautiful shiny red apple. She claimed it was a magic apple that would grant her deepest wish. But the queen had poisoned the apple, and she knew Snow White would not be able to resist its beauty. Snow White took a bite of the apple, and immediately she fell into a deep, death-like sleep. The wicked queen left the cottage, believing her plan had succeeded. When the dwarf returned home, they were devastated to find Snow White lying on still. They mourned their dear friend. But as time passed, something magical happened. A prince who had heard of Snow White's beauty arrived at the cottage. He was captivated by her, and thinking she was asleep, kissed her. The power of true love's kiss broke the curse, and Snow White awoke. She and the prince fell deeply in love, and they were married in a grand and joyful ceremony. The wicked queen, who had caused so much suffering, was banished from the kingdom forever. Snow White, now a queen herself, ruled with kindness and grace. She often visited the dwarf, who had become her dearest friend. The kingdom was filled with happiness and peace, and the tale of Snow White's kindness and bravery was told for generations to come. And so, my dear child, that is the end of the story of Snow White. It's a reminder that kindness, love, and friendship can triumph over jealousy and cruelty. Now, close your eyes and let your own dreams carry you to the land of magic and wonder. Good night, and may your dreams be as beautiful as Snow White's heart.